Hello and welcome to FFRF's Ask an Atheist. I'm Liz Cavell. It's our last show of the year and the war on Christmas rages on. So I have fellow FFRF attorney Chris Line, FFRF legal fellow Sammi Lawrence, joining me today to share some dispatches from the front lines in the war on Christmas. We are going to discuss a nativity scene that was removed from town property only to return with reinforcements from Santa, and the destruction of a Satanic holiday display in the Iowa State Capitol. Since we're pre-recording this last show of the year, we are not going to have live questions, but we are going to answer some of the most commonly asked questions about this topic at the end of the show. So, one of our most common issues that we deal with this time of the year, one of the most prominent parts of the so-called war on Christmas, is nativity scene displays on government property. So an unfortunate U.S. Supreme Court decision permits the government to host some religious holiday displays, and it's very messy and fact-dependent whether or not those displays are legal, but there are still some limits on religious displays around the holidays. Sammi, tell us about what happened in Toledo, Iowa, with the nativity scene there and why we got involved.
Well, we received a complaint from a concerned Iowan that the city of Toledo had a standalone Christian nativity scene in front of its fire department. So we wrote a letter to the mayor and the city council explaining that this is unconstitutional. They can't have a standalone nativity, and FFRF suggested that they remove the nativity and give it to a private individual or business or house of worship who can definitely legally display it, and we believe that those religious displays just belong in the private sphere generally. Well, the city removed the display temporarily, and after conferring with their lawyers, who I imagine told them exactly what we told them, they returned the display to the fire department, but this time it includes Santa Claus and reindeer, which are theoretically secular symbols of Christmas, but we would point out that the display is still entirely honoring Christmas, one religion's holiday, and not acknowledging any of the other many holidays that happen this time of year.
Yeah, no victory for diversity.
Yeah, it's also worth noting that, I mean, in that interim period where they removed the display, they actually moved it, I think, almost across the street. It was somewhere nearby. It was on private property or whatever. And the world didn't burn down during that time. I mean, it seemed like it did to the locals who showed up to the government meeting, but this is the one thing that always bugs me about these nativity scene things. It's you can put it on every church, not even every church, every household could put out a nativity if they want. They have all this land, all these places where you can put a nativity scene. We're just saying you can't do it on public property on its own because that makes it look like you're saying we, the government, support Christianity. So there's so many options to display, there's just not, it bothers me.
Right. Most times, like in this case, there's a church or a private business literally next door or right across the street from, the piece of government property where the nativity can be legally displayed with, nobody having any legal problems with its display, and you still get the same results without having the government take a stance and stake out a religious viewpoint during a holiday season that many people celebrate and don't celebrate for different reasons.
Yep, and I think that just proves the point that the whole purpose of it is to promote Christianity. Because otherwise they'd say, oh, if it's just about the nativity, they'd say, oh, it's fine. That nativity could be out in front of a church then, because we just want to see the nativity around Christmas time.
Yeah.
Like,
look, there's a church right across the street.
But they're like, no, it needs to be in front of City Hall. It needs to be in this public park because we need to stake this ground for Jesus, for Christianity. It's unfortunate that the Supreme Court has kind of signed off in certain circumstances to say, yeah, we're going to allow this. But in response to the Toledo controversy, the Catholic League actually challenged us to sue them. They said, we've had it with atheist bullies. That's why we're asking one of the most prominent groups, thank you, to consider suing us. They explained, this is pure intimidation. Nativity scenes on public property are necessary and appropriate at Christmas time, and the only people who think they are divisive are Christian bashers who specialize in dividing Americans. They then get dangerously close to correctly explaining the law, but not quite. It said it's entirely legal to display a nativity scene on public property. Some conditions may apply. Discussing their permitted display in Central Park, they explained, we don't have any secular symbols surrounding our display. No Jack Frost or reindeer. It's purely religious expression. That's because Central Park is considered a public forum open to all points of view. If we were to display a nativity scene on or near City Hall, the seat of government, we would have to include secular symbols. Otherwise, it might give the impression the government is endorsing Christianity. So it's very bizarre. They seem to get it pretty much for the most part.
That's very bizarre.
They do differentiate a little bit. They assume that it's automatically endorsement if it's on city. Like they kind of don't necessarily do a forum versus non-forum analysis. By the way, they lay it out completely and say, now that we've explained to you what it is, that a forum, it's fine to have these in a forum, but you can't just have a nativity scene on its own because that appears to endorse Christianity. Why don't you sue us over our perfectly legal display in Central Park? I'll bet you won't. And they're right, we're not going to sue them over their display.
It's also just, I have to say how bizarre it is to call FFRF bullies and accuse us of intimidation and then also say, please sue us. Like, it's very bizarre to go up to say, you're a bully and you're just trying to intimidate me. Now punch me in the face. That's a weird take.
It's a lot of mixed messages.
It's a lot of mixed messages.
Yeah. Yeah, so we actually have a video. You can see how bullying we look and atheists look in the situation in Toledo with this video.
If you drive through Toledo now, you can see the nativity scene back where it'd been for years, in front of the fire department. It was removed for several days after one man from Denver drove through and noticed it shouldn't be there, so he called City Hall.
Once the topic of the nativity scene came up, it was as if, I was threatening to burn down all the churches, and I didn't know what that was uncalled for.
So Scott alerted the Freedom from Religion Foundation, which sent a letter to the city about the nativity scene. That's when it was moved off public property, triggering a public outcry.
You don't want us to lose our heritage.
And no matter what we do, it's not going to be what they want. We're going to find issue with it.
Now, the United States Supreme Court has ruled that religious displays like this cannot be placed on public property unless there is secular displays as well. And as you can see, that's why Chris Kringle is right here. The additional non-denominational display brings all of this into line with the Constitution. Scott, who spoke to me in front of another nativity scene in nearby Traer, which is also surrounded by secular images, says that's all he was hoping for.
I don't believe there's any ill intent by the city of Toledo. I think it was just something that was nice. It was a nice gesture by a nice family. They put it up, and nobody bothered to notice that it was actually a constitutional violation.
We're proud of our display that's been a tradition for several years here in the community, and we're just glad that it was brought to our attention that it needed to be, improved upon, but we're also glad to have it back where it should be.
And with a jolly old elf and his reindeer. In Toledo, Nick Weig, Iowa's News Now.
Yes, very bullying, very much fear and intimidation going on, as you can tell by that clip. No, I mean, I don't necessarily share as much Justin's optimism with regard to it. No, I don't think like the city was like, really thinking about, oh, we're going to go out there, like we're going to put this nativity up just to promote Christianity. That's all we care about. I think it's more ignorance and not being informed and just kind of thinking, oh, it's Christmas time, someone wants to put this up, we'll put it up, without really thinking about the message it sends probably. And then the other reason I don't share his optimism is obviously the reaction of the community and the city council when this happened. They didn't go immediately go, oh, oops, we'll go ahead and correct that. They, stood pretty firm and said, we're going to figure out how we can do this and things like that to stand up and very much so. Also, there was nothing that said that they have to follow the reindeer rule and just put up something secular. They could have allowed, put up things for other holidays. They obviously chose not to put up maybe a menorah or something, put something up for the Bill of Rights, that we make a display to celebrate or anything like that. So kind of, like we said, it's just this because of the Supreme Court, because of the way the courts are in general. Unfortunately, this is probably the best we're going to be able to do for a while on nativities, is making sure there's not sole nativities on public property that really give a strong impression that that the government is sort of pushing Christianity. Our best victories right now are going to be secularizing these displays, unfortunately. But it is it is better to have a bigger display than just the nativity. But it does feel kind of hollow, and certainly not something you're celebrating necessarily.
Right. And I mean, to your comment about and Justin's about the ill or not ill intent of the government entity. I mean, I think it's kind of beside the point. It's not about intent. It's about the fact that the reason why there's so many government entities, city halls, pieces of government property where when the holiday starts and it's time to pull out the government holiday decorations, it's just a little scene depicting the birth of Jesus Christ, is because of Christian supremacy, right? We're talking about, systemic Christian supremacy being sort of embraced by, or the legacy of Christian supremacy lingering at the seat of government, and the fact that that actually is antithetical to our constitutional order. And it is important, whether it's intentional or it's just we've just been putting up a nativity only for the last 50 years. Regardless, it's important to push back against that because, cities, towns, villages, city departments are not supposed to stake out on the lawn that it's a place for Christians only during the holidays or any time of year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is only going to be a more prominent issue as we move forward with the demographic changes. More non-religious people, even some minority religions growing too, Christianity shrinking. It's just going to come up more and more that people are not feeling aligned with the way that these things are going. But Toledo complaint that we've been talking about, that involved a city-sponsored display on city property. But many state capitals have established a forum for holiday displays in response to a national conservative Christian movement seeking to put Christian nativity displays in every state capital. For years, FFRF has entered the fray and put up our own displays in these forums to counter the nativity. FFRF's Winter Solstice display, which depicts 3 of our founding fathers, plus the Statue of Liberty gazing at a manger scene containing the Bill of Rights, honors the December 15th anniversary of the signing of this foundational document in 1791. We just recently put up our display in the Iowa State Capitol building for the 7th year, but it was overshadowed this year, to say the least. This year, the Satanic Temple applied for and duly received permission to erect a display featuring an altar and depicting its 7 fundamental tenets of Satanism, which includes such scary things as calls for compassion, bodily autonomy, and freedom of expression. A few of their tenets are: one should strive to act with compassion and empathy toward all creatures in accordance with reason. Another, one's body is inviolable, subject to one's will alone. They also say the freedom of others should be respected, including the freedom to offend. And sort of the wrapping up tenet is, every tenet is a guiding principle designed to inspire nobility in action and thought. The spirit of compassion, wisdom, and justice should always prevail over the written or spoken word. Truly terrifying stuff.
Who could argue with that?
Well, as soon as the display was installed, there were already calls for it to be taken down from Christian lawmakers. Many intolerant Christians showed their true colors by calling for the display to be vandalized, sledgehammered, forcefully removed. Iowa State Rep. Brad Sherman had called the display disgusting, insisting that it be taken out and that the legislature even pass a law that prohibits satanic displays in the Capitol building. Governor Kim Reynolds joined in with the mob and lashed out against the display and the Satanic Temple, even using her gubernatorial office to do so. She released an official statement denigrating the religious beliefs of members of the Satanic Temple while promoting her own Christian beliefs. She said, like many Iowans, I find the Satanic Temple's display in the Capitol absolutely objectionable. In a free society, the best response to objectionable speech is more speech, and I encourage all of those of faith to join me today in praying over the Capitol and recognizing the nativity scene that will be on display, the true reason for the season. Now, she said, all of you, all those of faith, come join me talking about the nativity, clearly implying all people of faith are Christians.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you can guess what happened next. We have a clip that sums up the whole ordeal and what ended up happening in Iowa.
display from the Satanic Temple of Iowa at the State House has been damaged. The Satanic Temple posted this video to Facebook today. It says investigators told them their statue was damaged beyond repair. The display has been up for most of the month. The Satanic Temple of Iowa intended to keep it up until tomorrow. Now, this display has drawn a lot of controversy. The governor even called for people to pray over the Capitol in response to it. This display is permitted to be at the State House because of religious freedom.
Yeah, so yeah, you could see that's what the display looked like. Maybe a bit intimidating to some Christians, but certainly, you know, I mean, the important thing I think to highlight here is that the Iowa government does not have to allow these displays in its capital. It could say nobody puts a display up, but because they want the nativity scene displayed, this is how they've been able to do that. They then have to allow both the Satanic display, FFRF puts up a display, Iowa Atheist, there's a display in there too.
And that's what we mean when we say public forum. It's an area of government property that has been designated by the government to be open for private individual speech. It's, you know, like a community bulletin board. It's just open for speech. It does not represent the speech of the government, but it has to be, because it is sponsored, or it is opened by the government, it has to be neutral when it comes to viewpoint. So they can't, you know, pick and choose which viewpoints get represented. It's a public forum. It has to be open to all viewpoints, with the understanding that it's not the viewpoint of the government being represented. It's the diversity of viewpoints in the marketplace. And of course, the Christians who put up the nativity in the forum are happy to have access to the Capitol for that purpose during the holidays. But of course, you know, it's the end of the world when this, you know, satanic imagery is used to represent the Church of Satan, which of course has non-theistic tenets and is literally just trolling these people that are just being trolled happily.
No, it's a great troll, and it definitely points out the hypocrisy, because that's what we've seen with these forums, is they're saying, we got you, there's a nativity in the Iowa Capitol, but it's not endorsed by the government, like we don't support this. And we're kind of like, well, actually, even with the forum, it kind of looks like, it's weird to have stuff in the Capitol, and they're like, nope, this is private speech, this is fine. Then someone puts up a satanic display, not government sponsored in any way, it's in the Iowa Capitol, and everyone's like,
we can't
why
have this
is
in
the
our
government
Capitol. It's
endorsing, why is the government endorsing Satanism by allowing a satanic altar in the Capitol? And it's like, that's the issue, you know, and so this is how it's going to work. If we're going to have forums, then you have to allow everyone to speak, regardless of their religious viewpoint. You can't make any, you know, like Rep. Sherman calling for a law to make this illegal would violate the Constitution. That law would not be constitutional. You know,
right, that would be a law that says only satanic speech and symbols are banned and forbidden from this public forum.
Someone did end up destroying the Satanic Temple, as you would, or the Satanic altar, as you would expect. The Christian zealot, he was a veteran who destroyed the display, said, "The world may tell Christians to submissively accept the legitimization of Satan, but none of the founders would have considered government sanction of satanic altars inside Capitol buildings as protected by the First Amendment. Anti-Christian values have steadily been mainstream more and more in recent decades, and Christians have largely acted like the proverbial frog in the boiling pot of water." He also noted, "I saw this blasphemous statue and was outraged. My conscience is held captive to the word of God, not to the bureaucratic decree, and so I acted." So yeah, you have someone here who's saying, I don't care what the rules are, I don't care what the law is, I'm going to destroy the Satanic Temple. And he had clearly been egged on by government officials, not just by, you know, it's not surprising certain Christians, church leaders and things like that may have been egging this on, but you're talking about the governor, you're talking about state reps, really, you know, all saying, hey, sorry, we can't legally do anything about this, but this is bad, and like really pushing
I bet Governor
this.
Reynolds came out immediately with an official statement condemning his act of vandalism and criminal mischief.
She is not yet. I assume we're waiting on it for her to come out and say that. A lot of various government officials and Christians have come out, of course, in support of the Christian zealot who did this. There's been a campaign run to raise funds to pay for his bail. I'm
Wow.
not sure if he needed to be bailed out or not. I think he's facing a fine and/or up to a year in jail. I think that's the penalty for this. And he immediately turned himself in after doing this, probably choosing to be, a martyr. Yep. But I mean, you can kind of, I guess, to the Catholic League stuff about us being a bully and stuff. Well, let's look at the two differences. An atheist driving through Iowa saw a lone nativity display, felt like that was an unfair representation promoting Christianity. He actually reached out to the government officials himself first and said, hey, could you please do something about that? They did nothing. He reached out to us. We sent a letter. They went ahead and corrected it. They put up the Santa Claus display. That's how we handle these issues, using the law, using the official government channels, just trying to follow the rule of law, respecting it, and understanding that religious issues are complex, but that we need to abide by both the Establishment Clause, which separates church and state, and religious freedom, and kind of figure out a way to make that work. The other side, upon seeing a perfectly legal display within a government Capitol forum, calls for it to be destroyed, and then someone obviously acts that out. So I don't know who the bullies are in these sort of situations. I also don't know. It's not so much a war on Christmas from our side as it is a literal war for them. It seems like with the violence they're willing to do to uphold it. But
yeah, it's frustrating.
Yeah, so we could actually let's move on maybe to some lighter topics, not destruction of property. We can just run through a few other Christmas-related stories to wrap up the show. Earlier in December, a museum right here in Wisconsin was criticized for installing a satanic Christmas tree as part of its festive celebrations. For its Festival of Trees, the National Railroad Museum in Green Bay, Wisconsin, invited the Satanic Temple of Wisconsin, alongside 66 other local organizations and clubs, to decorate a tree to be installed amongst the transport exhibits. The Satanist tree featured red fairy lights, a snake-like decoration, upside-down crosses, pentagrams, and a bauble that reads, "Hail Santa."
Literally, that's just a red tree. And again, this is a public forum. What you're describing is a public forum. Well, a private forum.
Yeah, it's a private forum.
Because the Railroad Museum is actually private.
Yeah.
So we're not even talking about government property, but we're talking about a forum where, a private museum is asking different groups and organizations to submit a tree that they've decorated and included this local group.
Right.
That is the Satanic Temple. Are they a Satanic Temple chapter? The same,
Yep.
the same tenets
Yep.
you described earlier, right? This is a, sort of a, not a political, but like a non-theistic organization that is in the area to decorate their tree.
Yep.
This little red, inoffensive tree that says "Hail Santa."
Yeah, and important to note, like you said, this is a private group, so they literally could have all satanic displays if they want. They could choose to have all Christian displays. They could choose to say nope, Satanist, sorry, no Satan
Right,
here.
this is
They
literally just
chose
the Railroad Museum, just trying to, be in the spirit of community, have decorations from different community organizations.
So there's absolutely no reason for the government to get involved here. And yet, you'll be surprised to find that United States Rep and resident of the town, Mike Gallagher, told Fox News, "It's impossible to overstate how offensive this is to Christians."
Really? I think he just did it.
It would be, in quite a literal sense, the same thing as waving a Hamas flag inside of a synagogue. It's just absolutely crazy that we would allow this to happen.
Yeah, that's
Do you
definitely
guys think he overstated it?
Yeah, perhaps a little bit.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, you can't make this stuff up. So museum CEO Jacqueline Frank dismissed the outrage, telling the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel that children are going to come across this in other parts of their life, and maybe not with their parents. It's a good, very neutral way to be able to introduce these concepts and talk about what your personal beliefs are. Themed trees have also been contributed by churches and Christian groups.
Of course.
Yeah, it's the same thing, almost with like the book banning and things like that. Like,
Also,
people
the
are
tree
going to
is
be exposed to
red.
things.
It says "Hail Santa." I don't know how many Satanism conversations that tree would inspire with a young child. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say 0.
Yeah, no, it's...
But guys, Representative Gallagher did not overstate it when he said it's exactly the same as flying a Hamas flag in a synagogue. I'm seeing the analogy.
No,
I don't know about you.
Yeah, it's bizarre. Moving on. So
Unreal.
the conservative group 1 Million Moms recently launched a petition against Target over its
here we
decision
go.
to stock LGBT-themed Christmas merchandise, including gay Santas and pride nutcrackers.
Oh boy.
Yep. They said, Target has made a deliberate decision to display controversial products instead of wholesome ones at Christmas, a Christian holiday. This is a terrible plan on Target's part, especially this time of year, the season that should be the most profitable time of year for companies. I'm not going to have the stats in front of me, and we're not going to know till after the season's over. I feel like Target's going to be fine, and not going to tank and lose all of its profits.
Also, I love this idea that there's something like Christian and wholesome about retail giant Target. Like that somehow Target, if not for this pride merch, would be really representing the reason for the season as like conservative Christians see it.
Yeah, no, both the people at 1 Million Moms were outraged by this, I'm sure. And yeah. In Oklahoma, a holiday billboard caused some backlash after displaying an image of Santa Claus holding a rifle.
Oh boy.
According to H&H Shooting Sports, it wasn't meant to be controversial, but others raised some concerns. It just misses the mark in so many different places, said Joshua Harris-Till with Moms Demand Action. She added, I'm here to tell you that it's a horrible advertisement because guns are not for children and Santa Claus isn't for adults.
Pretty much sums it up.
Yeah, I'm not sure, exactly who's it targeted for. That perfect person who's like, I'm still into Santa, but I really love guns. Maybe an 18-year-old getting their first assault rifle. Something along is our mix. Of course, Ryan Walters, Oklahoma's Christian Nationalist State Superintendent, had to make a video weighing in on this.
Here we go.
I'm here with Mike Rust at H&H Shooting Sports, and let me tell you guys that the radical left is trying to cancel them because they did a great ad with Santa and an AR, and I just wanted to say, hey, you radical leftists, you're not going to cancel H&H.
No.
You're not going to cancel the Second Amendment.
Never.
And you're not going to cancel Santa Claus and Christmas. We're going to talk about Santa Claus. We're going to talk about the Second Amendment. And hey, we need more supporters of the Second Amendment like you, Mike, so I appreciate everything you're doing.
Oh, thank you. Remember, Santa Claus is for everyone.
That's right.
As he said, hey, I think we might have just declared a truce on the war of Christmas because he just said Santa Claus is for everyone. So I think we atheists now, we can have Santa Claus and we celebrate Christmas without worry. I think also the thing about Ryan Walters, I think if he trips his toe on something, he probably screams out about the leftist or whatever. I can't remember what phrase did he just use.
The radical
left.
leftists.
Yep, it's everything. It's just automatically. He has no other word to say. It's very bizarre.
I love that the state superintendent of public schools considers it like his role to be out publicly defending the Second Amendment. I'm not really understanding how that's what the people of Oklahoma elected him to do.
I mean, isn't that what happens in every state? That's part of the role of superintendent of education, to be out putting out videos fighting radical leftists and George Soros funded things and all of the stuff. Yeah, no, it's a shame. I mean, I've been hearing in the news there's some sort of issue going on actually in Oklahoma, something with the money. They're not getting the funding they need in the schools, and it seems like it might be his fault. Maybe he's spending too much time appearing in videos supporting things like this and not enough, looking out for good schools. And that honestly is one of the big problems with Christian nationalism, is that when these Christian nationalists are elected into the roles, they're not doing their job that they're supposed to be. Besides the fact that they're promoting Christianity, trying to enforce that on everyone, which of course is our main concern, it gets ignored that whatever role they're supposed to be serving, they're not doing it, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah, he's constantly fighting culture wars that have nothing to do with, the interests of public school students in his state. Yet he is the superintendent of public schools. It's a pretty important job.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point to wrap everything up on with this, that that's what the war on Christmas is just a chance to bring out a culture war once a year, regardless of what's going on, and just really focus on what's important, which is worrying about whether someone's saying Happy Holidays or Merry Christmas, or worrying about Are other religions participating this time of year and ruining the Christian dominionism that should take over the season that allows us to push Jesus and really secularizing Christmas and allowing it to be for everyone? And, the idea that, even us as atheists can go enjoy time with our family, even though we're not Christians and they're not celebrating a Christian holiday. I don't think there's ever really been a war on Christmas. It's just obviously a culture war issue. But nonetheless, when it comes to legal issues and separation of church and state, we'll be out there fighting the issues that do tie into Christmas or nativity displays and things like that.
Right. It's not a time of year when governments can align themselves with one particular religion just because it happens to be a holiday season when there's a big Christian holiday.
Right.
So it's just a time of year when, just like all the other times of year, government has to be secular. Yep. We are pre-recorded for this show, but we do have a couple of questions that are ones we're kind of often asked that come up again and again when we cover these topics during the winter and holiday season. So the first one I'm going to throw out there that we get a lot is, why is FFRF defending the Satanic temple and a satanic display? We don't believe in God or Satan. Isn't this the same as defending a nativity? So we touched on this when you, Chris, were explaining the tenets of the Church of Satan. But we should kind of just make it more explicit, which is that the Satanic temple, this particular group, uses Satan kind of as a, metaphor and an emblem to get people's attention, as it works perfectly because it's like a trolling mechanism that literally always achieves its trolling goal. But it's not a theistic, it's not a actual, we worship the Satan of the Bible and we believe that he's a real, deity. It is a non-theistic group that has, their belief system is the tenets that you referenced earlier. So it's a humanistic, non-theistic group that uses Satan and satanic imagery to generate public attention to these issues that they involve themselves in, like government endorsement and government promotion of Christianity.
Yeah, they've really just kind of taken the baton of what we've been doing for a long time, ramped it up, and actually been a lot more effective at it. Obviously FFRF has been doing sort of the same things where we try to participate in forums. If they say, oh, there's a nativity up, this is a forum, we put up either our Bill of Rights display, we've got other free thought displays and things like that. We've tried to enter various forums either to just, show that there's more points of view, or in some cases hoping that, oh, if the atheist comes in, maybe they'll shut it down.
Yeah.
But the Satanists have done much better. Like almost any time now that they enter a forum, they shut it down.
Yeah.
So it would not surprise me if
totally.
in the future Iowa decided not to have any displays in its capital just to avoid having to deal with the Satanic temple again.
As we've learned, the only thing more triggering to a Christian dominionist than the word atheist is the word Satan, which absolutely causes them to lose their minds over these displays. And of course, the Satanic temple is making the point that they're seeking to make when they get this kind of attention to their display, which is that opening up government property to, religious viewpoints around the holidays or any other time is divisive, it's, counterproductive to government business, and, it shouldn't be the place where these religious battlegrounds are taking place. There's plenty of private property for everyone to express their beliefs, through public speech.
Yep, they're amazing at exposing that hypocrisy, both through their displays like this, also through their after-school Satan Club, that's sort of the juxtaposition against the Good News Club,
right?
Which always shows. So, like for example, we're defending them in Nashville now because there's been outrage because they're opening a club there. Well, the Good News Club has been operating there for years.
It's actually Memphis.
Oh, Memphis. Sorry, thank you. Has been operating there for years, and nobody ever thought anything. Nobody thinks, oh, it's weird that this Christian group camps out at the school and targets all the students. But as soon as a Satanic Club kind of joins in and is like, hey, we're going to do the exact same thing they are, outrage ensues. They're trying to figure out how to legally exclude them, which they cannot,
Right.
And things like that. It just really highlights the hypocrisy and the fact that they thought they could just get away with it because it's Christian, and when any other religion
Right.
tries to enter the fray.
And again, in that situation, the reason why they're legally operating in the school facilities is because of public forum law, First Amendment free speech law, which says that if a public school district opens up its facilities for use by third parties, non-school groups, it can't discriminate on the basis of viewpoint. So if they rent their rooms after school hours, or if they open them up for free, the criteria needs to be viewpoint neutral, which means if the Satanic Temple is operating a kids club, in the same vein as Good News Club, they can't be excluded just because people don't like the literal word Satan.
Yep.
So
that answers the question.
So here's another one that we get a lot, and is a little unsavory, but doesn't a nativity scene in a public park or city property still promote Christianity, even with secular symbols like reindeer and Santa Claus?
Well, Sammi touched on this even when we were talking about it, that, how does that
change?
It doesn't. And the answer is it doesn't.
Yeah.
But the Supreme Court has just made this up. It's the same thing as like "In God We Trust." They've ruled "In God We Trust" is a secular statement. It's clearly not. Same thing here. They're saying, oh, as long as you've got Santa and some reindeer with Jesus, oh, that's not promoting Jesus and Christianity anymore. Except it is. So it's just we just have to live with it, unfortunately.
That's true. I think it's also the court, in past years anyway, is grappling with something that I think we all recognize to be true, which is that Christmas, or just the holiday season, has become a somewhat secularized, for many people, many Americans, a cultural phenomenon, is the words of the court. But I think, there's some acknowledgement that, like, we as atheists often celebrate many aspects of the holiday season. And, I know Ryan Walters has just jumped up and claimed Santa for the Christians, but
no, they declared it for everyone. That was
right. But somehow we radical leftists are trying to cancel Santa. I'm not trying to cancel Santa. I love Santa. I love gay Santa. I love straight Santa, black Santa, all the Santas. Many of us non-Christians celebrate elements of what have come to be associated with Christmas that the court is calling out as secular decorations. Reindeer, Jack Frost, which Bill Donahue pulled out of like the 1950s. Jack Frost is something. Frosty the Snowman, all of these things, even a tree with lights, and all these, pagan descendant holiday festive traditions that are just part of the cultural zeitgeist, and they're not necessarily Christian, but the court is kind of acknowledging that there's some version of the season that governments can acknowledge and celebrate, and they're choosing to allow the nativity to be a part of that, and saying that when it's viewed in that context, that changes, the picture and the statement that the government entity is making. I think that's the generous interpretation.
Right. You're right. To give some credit, obviously it starts with like, oh, a city has tons of holiday displays. One of them is the nativity, and so they say this is actually fine in this context.
Right.
But then, because of the way people work, it gets whittled down to, oh, cool, we're putting up a nativity, or we have a nativity, which is now illegal. How can we make it legal? And then that's where the court obviously doesn't want to get into a place of saying, well, you have to have 4 secular displays
right.
or whatever. And so that's how we end up in the situation where apparently you can have 1,
right.
Or things like that, because the court's not going to step in every time and weigh out. We're not going to do a mathematical equation on how secular or non-secular it is. But, we're still going to, but in this, obviously, if there's ever just a nativity scene somewhere on city property, you can bring that to our attention, and we're
always going to push back on that.
Because even if we can't sue to get these things changed, we can still raise awareness. We can still make it known, hey, there are non-Christians in the community who don't feel represented by this and don't think their government should do it. And yeah, most of the time, that majority of Christians in the neighborhood is going to overrule, is going to sort of get the city council, which is also probably mostly Christians, are going to then say, nope, we're going to keep this. But it's still worth fighting and letting them know we're here. And like I said, as the demographic shift, that's going to change in some places. Not everywhere, not fast. Certain places it's going to take a very long time for that to change. But in certain areas, there will become places where more people are secular than not. And they're going to just go, you know what, we have displayed the nativity for 30 years. And it doesn't represent our community anymore. It's not, you know, we don't want to be sort of supporting one religion over others, and they'll either, you know, truly make a display that represents everyone, or just stop kind of getting involved in the religious aspects of the holidays altogether. That would be a good result.
All right, here's one more question that we get around this time, and I think it's important to touch on because even before the Satanic temple kind of entered the fray, for years we have had issues with putting our own atheist displays in public forums and having people go absolutely nuts about it. So it seems like atheist displays and now Satanic displays always get destroyed when they get put up in a public forum. Shouldn't we level the playing field and take down nativities?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously the answer is very obvious to this, that no, that's not, you know, how we should do things. And like you noted, we've had our Bill of Rights nativities had heads cut off of it, things like that. Our previous ones, you know, someone will slash a
banners.
We've
had a lot of banners over the years, and going back as long as, you know, FFRF has been doing this, you know, 20 years, are banners that just have, you know, sort of irreverent but inoffensive holiday, you know, I'm trying to think of the Saturnalia, you know, like just cheeky.
Yeah, we've had like there are no gods, no angels, no devil, you know, and things like that. They just kind of.
That just always get ripped, torn, destroyed, pulled down, stolen. It happens every year for as long as FFRF has been doing displays. And now, of course, without fail, it happens to the Satanic Temple's displays in the holidays. But of course, like, it's vital to be able to make point out the contrast between, you know, the way in which FFRF is trying to enforce the law and also represent the diversity of viewpoints in these communities, because of course we're always hearing from local community members that are bringing these displays to our attention. We don't know what's going on in Toledo, Iowa, unless somebody from that community and that part of the country is bringing it to our attention. So it's important to draw a contrast between the way that we're seeking to enforce the law and the way that some of our adversaries are going about, you know, answering our actions.
Yeah, we need to take the high road, and you know, I'll say the one good thing Governor Kim Reynolds said, I'll take from her thing, is true, is that the antidote for bad speech is good speech, or if there is something concerned in a forum or things like that, we need to answer back. So if there's a nativity in a forum in your area, you should contact us to put up an FFRF display, put up your own display, you know, and just really share a positive message. I think it's important that we don't give into this notion of a war on Christmas and turn it into an actual war, because nobody in this country really wants to be fighting. And in fact, that's honestly one of the reasons why the separation of churches is so important. It's one of the reasons why the founding fathers, you know, included that when founding our country, because they knew what happens when you have the government involved with religion, the strife, the war, the fighting, the bloodshed that happens when religion mixes with government and people are having to fight over religious issues. But we did away with that when we founded this country. We have a secular nation where, you know, Christians are totally free to practice their Christian religion. Non-religious don't have to practice in religion or practice what they want. People can join the Satanic Temple. You can affiliate and be whatever religion you want. And that's great. And we should celebrate that during this time of season. And even, you know, if there's a nativity scene up and our displays are being taken down, we shouldn't join in the fray and sink to that level to be destroying things. We're going to try to do it through the law, through policy. We'll elect government officials who support the separation of church and state, support free speech rights, and just kind of, you know, it's a time that we should be fighting for democracy so that we can, you know, have a country that has differences while still, you know, staying together, especially this time of year where we want to sort of celebrate, have time with family, and be festive.
Yeah. I mean, it's the true religious freedom that we're always fighting for, which means that all American believers and non-believers of every stripe are allowed to exercise their conscience as they see fit, and nobody gets the, government stamp on their individual religion. The government stays neutral, and everyone gets true religious freedom, and that is an American invention, and that's what we celebrate.
Truly, it would not bother me if every church I drove by had a nativity. If most private people had nativities in their front yards, it would not faze me for 1 second. I wouldn't think 2 seconds about it. You know what I mean? That's private religious. I just have no issue with that. It's just the issue is when people try to use the government to push their religion and to kind of say that you have to be a part of that. That's obviously the issue.
Okay. Well, that's all we have for today. Thank you for tuning in. Happy New Year. That concludes our show, but don't forget that we have a weekly broadcast TV show, Free Thought Matters. This week, Annie, Lori, Gaylor, and Dan Barker examine the winter solstice, the real reason for the season, and add in some music to celebrate the coming of winter. Here's a preview.
I'd ever be the one you chose out of 1,000 invitations you'll receive. Up in case I stand one little chance, here comes the jackpot question in advance. What are you doing New Year's Eve?
You can see Free Thought Matters on TV stations all across the U.S. and also on FFRF's Facebook and YouTube channels.
And don't miss Free Thought Radio. This week, you can listen to the show, and you can find that show at ffrf.org/radio.
Check out the latest episode of our We Dissent podcast. Our newest episode drops today when you're watching this, Wednesday. You can hear me, Rebecca Markert, and American Atheist's Allison Gill. We interviewed ex-Mormon lawyer and former BYU assistant dean Anaya Gale. Listen and subscribe to We Dissent wherever you get podcasts, or check us out online at we-dissent.org.
If you want more information on the Freedom from Religion Foundation, check us out at FFRF.org. If you're already a member, thank you. And if you're not, please join us. Thank you for watching Ask an Atheist, and we'll be back next week.